Okay, we have now hit recording on this, and I will say good morning, community college family. It's good to have you here this morning. I hope you all are doing well. Uh, Probably about once or twice a year, we try to invite our esteemed colleague, Amanda Tolar, and her crew to come in and talk to us about compliance issues. So, since she probably has a lot to say, I'm going to keep it short and say that this is one of those times, and we really appreciate you coming, Amanda, to talk to us about the issues or some of the things you're finding when you uh, do your compliance visits to the community colleges. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and turn it over to you and keep quiet and let you do your thing. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. We appreciate it, and we are always happy to join, and we appreciate the opportunity to speak to everyone as we go through. If you have questions, then just let us know. Um, Dr. Hickman, if you'll help with that, that would be great. All right, we're going to get started. If I can get there we go. Got to hit
Is
the
it
button a
working?
little hard. It did.
Okay.
I didn't hit the button hard enough.
And just one
So
more
we
thing, I sent you a copy, everyone a copy. I put the presentation in the invite just now, so you should be getting that also. I have access to it.
And we will also be putting this on our webpage. And here is how you get to our webpage on the System Office website. We have a lot of presentations that we do, and we always make sure that we get those out there. So anytime if you've lost this one, it should be out on our webpage. I always like to tell everybody that the System Office website has a lot of good information, and I encourage everyone to go out and look at it often. I also encourage everyone to go out and make sure that you know how to get to State Board Code. Um, and take a look at code, take a look at numbered memos, take a look at the System Office State Board page so that you see what's being updated, because that's the way you keep up to date with everything. When we come out to do your compliance review, these are the references that we're going to use. General statutes, State Board Code is our primary reference. We're also going to use some numbered System Office numbered memos, and then your local college policies and procedures and catalogs and publications. This is what we're looking at when we're going to come out to your campus. We do a numbered memo every year that lists the information that we're going to be reviewing and the colleges that are going to be reviewed for that year. It usually comes out about the end of July, the 1st of August. It comes out from Dr. Gold. This year we sent it out in August, and the numbered memo is in the corner. It's CC 25068. So if you are unsure whether your college is going to be having a compliance review this year, you can check that list. You're always welcome to reach out to the compliance staff and ask. But again, this information that's on this slide, this is what we look at when we come out to do a compliance review at your college. I say this a lot, and I want to say it again. We're still having trouble with attendance records being signed. Please, 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 I beg of you, ensure that your instructors are signing their rosters. This isn't new. This isn't anything that's different. But we are finding it across the state. It's becoming a bigger and bigger problem. So please make sure that your instructors are signing their rosters. We need to have one official attendance record. We have gone to colleges where we'll look at the roster and there's multiple rosters, so we don't know which one to look at. So we need one official. We need the one that was used to report on the ICR. Usually that's going to be your final attendance record. Attendance should be clearly documented, so you should enter your students on the seated portion, the online portion, the lecture, the lab, the clinical, all of those areas. You only have to enter a student in one section. So if you have a hybrid class or a blended class, by code, you just have to enter them in one section. it is better if you will enter them in all sections, especially if a class has a seated portion, because if you've lost your statistical documentation for that student, then we can get to entry in this on the a seated portion. But please, I want to say this again. Please make sure that your attendance records are signed and verified by the instructor who taught the class. So you can't have the dean or the director. You can't have the vice president, the president. It has to be the instructor who taught the class. Please make sure that before an instructor leaves, that you have them sign the roster. And I have said this too, if you're going to fire an instructor, if you know that they're not doing what you need them to do, or if you know that they're going to be leaving because they've taken another job, before you let them leave, please make sure that you have verified that they have signed the instructor. I mean, they have signed the roster. If they have not signed the roster, you may not report those hours. If a roster that is not signed is found during a compliance review, all of those hours will be included in a finding. Do we have any questions about instructor signature before we move on? Okay. Let's talk about the top compliance issues that we have found. And I know, surprisingly, the first one is the instructor signature. This is for curriculum. Please make sure that your instructors sign the roster. It needs to be signed and dated after the census date. Again, please make sure that your instructors are signing the roster. I know across the state everybody thinks I'm crazy, but we are still having a problem. Let's go ahead, Dr. Hickman. I
A medical
apologize.
question. Teresa asks, if there are multiple instructors for the class, is it okay to have the instructor for the last day sign?
That's fine, as long as it is an instructor in the class. That'll be fine, yeah. We find that a lot in continuing education, especially in like some of the public safety classes where somebody will teach Monday. The class goes from Monday through Friday, and somebody teaches Monday, a different one teaches every day, and then the person on Friday signs it. That's fine.
So electronic signatures in accordance with the college's electronic policy, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Someone asked that.
Yes. Another issue that we're finding is the number of students at the census. Please make sure that you're using the official withdrawal date, not the LDA, which is the last date attended, to report the number of students. What we're finding across the state is a lot of times folks are getting that confused and they're underreporting. So you wouldn't use the last date the student attended. You would use when that student officially withdrew from the class. So if a student attends the first day of class, and that was their last day, but they don't withdraw until after the census, then that student is reportable for FTE. It may have financial aid implications, but for reporting on your ICR, you would be able to report that student.
So quick question, what if the instructor has been terminated?
For instructor signature?
Yes.
Get them to sign it before you terminate them.
Okay, thanks.
I mean, if you know that you have an instructor who is not going to you're not going to rehire that instructor. If it's in curriculum, they should have signed it by the census date, and so that's okay. In continuing education or CCR, they need to sign it after the class is over. So get them to sign it before you tell them that you're not going to hire them back. For BLET, if you have limited enrollees, please do not put those students in the main BLET class, because what's going to happen is the person who's reporting the ICR may not know that they're a limited enrollee, so they report them for the full 880 hours. So limited enrollees should be put in a separate section. If you put them in the section with all of your BLET students where it's the main class and it's being reported for 880 hours, then you need to back those hours out for the limited enrollee. So if the limited enrollee was supposed to be reported through standards for 200 hours, you would need to deduct the 660 for the other students, for the limited enrollee. BLET has become a little bit of an issue. One of the things that we are now doing is we are not looking at the pre and post delivery. So for those of you who are having an upcoming review, you don't have to give us the pre and post reports. We do need the final calendar, the sponsorship letters, and the student course completion records. Now, if you have a class that is using the new system, you may call that the departure report. But what we're looking for is to see the date that the student left the BLET class, and that date is the date reported to standards. Do we have any questions about BLET?
The only other question I see is now, so if the student doesn't contact the instructor, they aren't coming back to class for CE, for Con Ed, we should not use the LDA. Do I need to read that?
So in a continuing education class, it would a lot of continuing education programs across the state don't have an official withdrawal policy. So we urge colleges to have an official withdrawal policy for CCR, CE, and CU. I can't think of a college across the state that does not have an official withdrawal policy for curriculum. But again, it's usually CCR and Con Ed that they don't. So if a student attends class and doesn't let the instructor know that they are leaving, then you would follow your policy. And if they don't receive a refund, that student can be reported. What you want to do is have a withdrawal policy. So if then that student joins another class, if they have officially withdrawn from one class and did not receive a refund, then you wouldn't have to worry about that student on the overlap report. And we've got a slide a little bit later to talk about the overlap report. So for WBL, please make sure that your students are entering during the census period with either an orientation or they have started the work experience. Please make sure you do not report a student without a timesheet. Any questions about that?
Someone asked, will you repeat the list of documents needed for BLET?
Sure. We need an attendance roster. We need a final calendar. We need the sponsorship letters for the students or the tuition documentation. And then we need the student course completion record, which is what BLET programs had to turn into standards previously, and now they call it the departure report. But the only thing that has changed is we are no longer looking at the pre and post delivery. We talked to Jennifer Fisher and Kenny Weatherington, and if a college doesn't have a pre and post delivery report, that issue has probably been handled by standards prior to us getting there. For WBL, it is advisable if you will ask your students to go ahead and turn in a timesheet after their first or second week. That way, if they fail to return, then you have documentation that they started the work experience. So from a compliance standpoint, we need to see a timesheet and how they entered the class. So please make sure you're getting that timesheet.
So Amanda, other question. If we are keeping electronic BLET records, do we need to also keep hard copy records in perpetuity? Tongue twister, sorry.
We would need
Kelly.
the compliance right now uses hard copy records. We do not do electronic reviews right now. And then you would need to follow the records and retention disposition schedule to about how long you need to maintain those documents.
So not forever.
But we're not doing change of majors anymore because of it's too late this semester. So if there's a change of major, it will start in.
I don't know how long you need to maintain the records. You do need to maintain them through when the compliance review is held, but then you need to look at the records retention disposition schedule. I'm just not sure exactly how long everything needs to be maintained.
I think that schedule is probably 3 or 5 years. I need to see if I can find that schedule to see if it's been updated.
The last time I looked, it was on the System Office website.
Mhm.
I can't remember where, but it is on the system. It was on the System Office website. But again, that's not my area, so I would I would hesitate to say a certain amount of time and give someone the incorrect information.
Okay. Question, does the partial time sheet for WBL need to be signed?
No, we wouldn't care if it was signed. I mean, because it may be that for the work experience, the employer would only want to sign it once a month, and that's okay. What we want you to do is to have something showing that they started the work experience. Because again, if that student leaves and doesn't finish the WBL, or leaves and finishes it and just never returns everything to you, at least you have something so that the student could be reported for FTE. All right. Moving on to CCR. Um, Membership hour classes are starting to become an issue. Please make sure that if you are holding a CCR membership hour class, that if you're reporting all of those hours, you're holding all the hours and you're paying your instructor for all of those hours. CCR for a number of years has been contact hour class. And so if a class was missed, the instructor was not paid and the hours may or may not have been made up. With a membership hour class, you can make up those hours either by extending other class hours, scheduling a separate day, or using an outside assignment. But you have to remember that you have to pay your instructor for those hours. So please make sure that you are going back and looking at all of your membership hour classes. Look at how many hours are reported on the ICR, make sure that your instructors are paid, and make sure that class was held, just like you would any other membership hour class in curriculum or continuing education. Calculating hours is much improved, but there are still some rounding issues, so please make sure you're rounding it to the quarter hour. For your online sections, usually when we're calculating errors, we're finding them on the online sections. We need for you to total those daily. You can report them weekly on the advances roster, but we've got to get to how you got to that weekly total. You had to get to the weekly total somehow, so just write those on that form so that we can see, the student A had this many hours on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturdays, and then that's how many hours they were reported for the week. As we said, show your work. If you haven't totaled up all of those hours, we're going to hand them back to you and ask you to do it because we simply don't have enough time to do that during a review. Please make sure that you're paying your instructors for all of the hours. This is becoming an issue, and it's becoming an issue with online classes. So when you have a class that is a blended or a hybrid class, usually there's not a problem with paying your instructor for all of the seated hours. What happens is that the hours for the online piece are not being calculated. So if you want to use a full-time instructor for the online hours and a part-time instructor for the seated hours, that's fine. But then we need to know how many hours that full-time instructor was responsible for. That needs to be determined at the beginning when you're building the class. So you need to say, we've got instructor A who's part-time, we've got 100 hours that are seated, so we're going to pay instructor A 100 hours. And then a full-time instructor B is going to be responsible for how many hours. So you need to look at that class and say, okay, we expect each student is going to do 10 hours per week for the 16-week class. So the full-time instructor would be responsible for 160 hours. Do we have any questions about anything about CCR with the membership hour classes and online sections, instructor payment?
This is more CU. For a CU course, a student is withdrawn for excessive absences with a last date of attendance of 8/19, and the instructor withdrew the student on 9/22. Will we use the date the withdrawal was reported or the day that the student actually left?
If the student has put in a withdrawal date, that's the date we're going to use. But if a student does not officially withdraw themselves, then we would look to see when the instructor withdrew them.
Okay, so it's about to, okay, got you. So just to make sure, so if the teacher withdrew the student on 8/19, but the
If
student withdrew in September 22nd, you would
well,
use the August date.
if you're following your policy and your instructor can withdraw them, probably they're not going to have enough absences from excessive having not attended. They're probably not going to have enough absences prior to the census date to get there. But if that is your policy and you're withdrawing a student prior to the census date, then you would follow that.
Okay, two more questions. We offer online career step classes that use a panel of people for instructional questions. There is not a specific instructor. We have documentation from them saying our director has permission to pull attendance records and has no access to change records. Can the person who pulled the online records and records attendance from CS sign the roster?
Normally with Career Step and Ed2Go, what we're looking for is the person whose job it is at the college to manage that. So usually there is one person who manages the Career Step or the Ed2Go, and that's the person who should sign it.
Okay.
And for those classes, we're looking for an instructor who usually it's some full-time employee who works for the college. And then that's their job to do those classes.
Okay. A membership class, Computer Basics, that meet Monday and Wednesday from 9 to 12 for 4 weeks, then attends a contract hour class and basic skills for one of those Mondays from 9 to 12. Can they be counted as both classes?
No. So if you had the computer class that goes Monday, Wednesday, 9 to 12, then that student, and I'm guessing, so correct me if I'm wrong, that computer class is a membership hour class? Is that correct?
Latrice? Yes, she said yes.
Okay. Then if they have a BSP 2000 class, that's a contact hour class. So as long as none of the hours that they had in the BSP 2000 class overlapped, then they could be reported. But if you then have, instead of saying BSP 2000, you have a BSP 5500, and that's a membership hour class, and it meets Monday and Wednesday 9 to 12, then no, you can't have that. You can have a contact hour class and a membership hour class overlap and not remove the hours so long as the student is not in that contact hour class and when the membership hour class is meeting.
It's the last question.
Okay. So, continuing education compliance issues, instructor signature. You'll notice that for CCR, instructor signatures last year was not an issue, and CCR is not an issue this year. Curriculum and Con Ed were. Please make sure that your instructors are signing their roster. Do we have any more questions about instructor signature? Please make sure if you have a compliance review this year, you're going back and checking the rosters. If there are no instructor signatures, you can get that instructor to sign it so long as your college has not received their documentation for the compliance review. If you do not have a compliance review this year, please go back and make sure that you're getting your instructor signatures. But I beg of you, if you have a compliance review scheduled, go back and look at your rosters and get the instructor to sign them. And I know everybody gets tired of hearing me say it, and I'm tired of saying it. So go back and get your instructors to sign the roster. Instructor, yes.
In a CCR membership hours class, if the instructor is present and no students attend, is it permissible to pay the instructor for 1 hour and adjust the hours at the end of the course?
No, if it's a membership hour class, the instructor must be paid for all of the hours that are reported. But if you want to adjust it, you could. So if your class is being reported for 90 hours and you have it meets three hours each night, the instructor shows up one night and there were no students, they stayed for an hour. So you adjusted their pay rate and you paid them for an hour, you would need to change the total hours reported on the ICR to 88. But
Okay.
you could do an outside assignment for your students and report those hours.
Okay. Do CCR instructors also need to sign the GROS, the gross grade roster, in addition to the attendance sheet?
No, they do not have to sign that. It's a good idea to have them sign their sign in and out sheets, because if you have an instructor who didn't sign their roster in CCR, we can look at their sign in and out sheets, and if those are signed by the instructor, we can use those. But the GROS doesn't have to be signed. And if you didn't have your sign in and out sheet signed and you did not have your attendance roster signed, we wouldn't use the GROS. For your instructor contracts in continuing education, we are not looking to make sure that they're signed at any particular time. So if you have an instructor who signs their contract after the class is over, that's fine. Compliance does not look at the instructor contract to see that the instructor contract was signed prior to when the class began. It can be signed at any time. It cannot be signed. We just want to make sure they were paid. For third-party instructors, please make sure that you're putting the documentation in there. We need to see the PSA, which is the professional service agreement. We also need to see that the instructor or the company was paid. So please make sure you put the contract in, which should have the instructor name. But we understand that sometimes it may not have that name, and that's okay. But we need to see how much they were supposed to be paid. That should be in there. And then we need to see that it was paid. How it's paid, the documentation can be a copy of the check. It can be a note from the business office saying it was paid. We just need to see it was paid. I can't think of anything else right now that shows how it was paid. But again, we're looking to make sure that the instructor got paid. That means your folks that are working for your college and your third-party instructors. For online classes, please make sure that your attendance is maintained throughout the class. What you're going to do is you can put the students that enter. You enter the students based on their statistical documentation, and then you can start taking attendance once a week. Usually, most colleges will do it once per week, but you can't just write on there the day they enter and then not do anything else. You need to maintain attendance.
Okay, you got 4 questions.
Okay.
One is on the registration form, is the social security number, high school attendant, and job title required?
It depends about the job title. We're not going to need to see compliance services is not going to see the social security number or the high school attendant. You need to follow your internal policy, because when someone is being registered, that information probably needs to be included, but that's not a compliance issue. For job title, if the class is fee waived for public safety, then yes, we're going to need to see it. If it's for HRD, then yes, we're going to need to see it, because that usually factors into how they're being fee waived. But for HRD, what we're going to look for is that the student sign that form and check the box on why they should receive that fee waiver. For a public safety class, we're going to look to make sure that the student signed the document, they listed their agency, and they listed their job title or job classification.
Okay. Let's see. Is it okay if the PSA is not signed prior to the submission of the ICR?
As long as that becomes a financial issue. But for us, what we need to see is the agreement and how much was paid. So I'm not saying that it doesn't need to be signed, because That may be that may be an issue that would come up in a financial audit, but for compliance, we need to see we need to see the contract and how much they were supposed to be paid and that they were paid.
Okay. If a CCR instructor is 15 minutes late to a membership class, no other person is covering it, what is the best practice to follow for resolution/documentation?
Just document how you made up that time.
Okay. If the PSA is paid after the submission of the ICR, what if the PSA is paid after the submission of the ICR?
That's fine. If you have a class that is held on May 10th, it may not get paid until after the ICR. It certainly may not get paid until the semester is over. It may not get paid until the ICR has been submitted. That's okay. You should hold those classes, make sure that everything gets paid, and at least by the next semester, if it hasn't been paid, you need to start looking into why it hasn't been paid and if it's going to be paid. But no, if the ICR has been submitted, that's fine, because we're not going to show up on your campus in summer asking you if the previous spring has been documents have been paid. The soonest that we would show up would be usually September. We have started as early as the end of August, but right now our schedule, we start in September and end in June. So you've got plenty of time to get that.
Okay. Our PSAs are also being required by our college to be signed by the vendor. Is that something that is required for compliance?
Again, yes, you should follow your internal policies and procedures, but compliance is looking to see how much they were owed and if they were paid.
Online
But again,
CE
you should
courses.
follow your internal college policies for that.
Okay. Online CE courses, do we record weekly attendance just through the census date or all the way to the end of the class?
All the way through the end of the class.
Okay. Let's see, I think there's one more. WBL classification, the orientation and timeline, these must be submitted by the course's census date in order to count for students.
Now, you could do their orientation prior to the beginning of the class. Some colleges will do that and this is just in curriculum. I haven't seen anyone do this in continuing education. So for curriculum, we sometimes see that the student does the orientation before the class begins, and in that case, then they must begin the work experience during the census point.
Okay, that's the last one so far.
Okay. All right, overlap report. Please understand that even if you are not the person who does the overlap report, everyone deals with the overlap report if they work for a college, because when you're building a class and entering students, if something comes up and says this is an overlap, you need to stop and look at it. You need to realize that you may or may not be able to report the hours for that student. So you need to limit the number of folks who have override rights to kind of keep this manageable. So for the overlap report, what we are looking for is we need to see that the adjustments were clearly noted on the report. Please make sure that you're providing the working copy for the compliance review. We don't need to see a pristine, clean, perfect overlap report. That does us no good. We're just going to hand it back to you and say, I need the working copy so I can see where you've worked it. Or we're going to, if you say, well, we haven't done it, then I'm going to say, well, here it is. You're going to need to do it. So please make sure that you're doing that you're giving us the working copy that shows where you've answered whether it is an overlap or not. Please make sure that you're giving us the reports, and this is all XPA reports. So in curriculum, we're looking at the underage, the overlap, and the WBL report. And in Con Ed, we're looking at the overlap and the underage, and in CCR, underage, and now we have another XPA report to do, the underapp. No, there's another one. I got that wrong too. So make sure you're giving us the copies of those reports that have the date on it. a lot of colleges are going to take that information and then pull it over into a spreadsheet. When you pull it over into the spreadsheet, it's not giving us the date ranges and it's not giving us the date that the run date. So please make sure you're giving us the original so we can look at it and make sure that we have all the information we need. You should document it in the file. If you've adjusted hours, you should put something in the file. We did not report student X because there was an overlap and we took off 3 hours for this class. If you're in charge of the overlap report in CE and you have a colleague who's in charge of it in curriculum and you have a colleague who handles it in CCR, you all need to do your own adjustments. So CCR to CCR, Con Ed to Con Ed, curriculum to curriculum. And then at some point you need to come together and work on that report. You need to determine where it best fits in to make the adjustment. It used to be years and years ago that Con Ed was always going to take the adjustments no matter what, but that's not the way it works now. So you need to work together so that you limit the amount of hours that are being adjusted. Use the date range listed in State Board Code, and that is listed here, 1G 100.1 definitions. Typically, we're going to see this as a problem more in curriculum where you're just using the dates for your curriculum semester, but it is for the full semester.
Okay, Amanda.
Okay.
Our policy is that the instructor record the first date of attendance, record the first attendance for online courses and online components of hybrid and blended courses. We do not require a weekly attendance. I'm guessing this is not a concern as this is how we have been doing this for years, but wanted to make sure.
In curriculum, we're going to look through attendance through the census date. In continuing education and CCR, we're going to look for attendance through the entire semester.
Okay. So Angela and Holly, is that what you were wanting, or do you want to expand upon that? For online, Amanda?
For online, yes, in continuing education and CCR. Well, especially for CCR, because every time a student has attendance in CCR, it has to be documented on the roster. That is a federal requirement.
Okay.
And then even for a membership hour class, because and then for Con Ed, yes, we're typically seeing what we're looking for is attendance at just the once a week maintained throughout the semester. We would not give, we would have that conversation. We wouldn't take the hours, but we have been having that conversation with folks about make sure you're maintaining attendance through the semester.
I'm not sure if this is a continuation. So a CE hybrid class that meets face-to-face virtually weekly and keeps attendance still need an online roster with weekly attendance?
Yes, we see for a hybrid class, you're going to have an online roster or a roster that shows the online hours, and then you're going to have the seated roster.
That's the last one.
Okay. These are some of the best practices to mitigate risk. I want everybody to take a look at it. We've talked about it before, but I want to tell you this. If you have a class that changes the date range, you need to pay particular attention to that class. So if you have a class that starts in January and goes to March and the date range changes, it's going, even if you go in and change it, it's probably only going to report once. And Lashima can probably help me with this a little bit better. It's only going to report once on the ICR in the semester. If you have a class that the date range changes and it goes between 2 semesters, you need to make sure that you're paying attention to whether it's been reported on the ICR twice. Because when you go in and change the date range and it moves to a different semester and you don't cancel it and rebuild it, then you run the risk that it's going to be reported twice, once in the semester where it was originally intended to end and once in the semester where it ends. So please make sure that you're looking at those classes. If you make sure your folks know that if they change those dates, they need to let the person who reports the ICR know so that can be addressed and double checked. That is a very high level of risk. Lashima, do you think I got that okay?
Yep, perfect.
All right. Please make sure that you're asking your instructors to look at their contracts. Please make sure you're asking your instructors to look at everything about that. The instructor has responsibilities, and one of those is that they need to look at everything. They need to look at the attendance roster and make sure that it's accurate. They need to mark their attendance. If the schedule changes, they need to note it. They need to provide all of the additional documentation. If it's CCR or a contact hour class, they need the time in and out sheets. If it's online class, they need the LMS documentation. If it has a clinical, they need to provide the clinicals. They need to check their payment and make their instructional contracts and make sure that they're being paid properly. But the one thing that I want to say is that you all should have a set time that an instructor it should get their information to you, and you should stick to it. And if we have any folks who are vice presidents or deans or directors on this call, please make sure that you have that and you have it. You're holding your instructors accountable, because we have been to colleges where they said, we didn't know that we didn't have that file until it came in on the sample sheet. And for this particular class, it happened to be an EMS class that was reported for about 6,000 hours, and that's a minimal finding in and of itself. So I stress to you, one, make sure your instructors are signing their rosters, and two, they're getting their information into you so that it can be verified. Curriculum membership hour classes need to be certified on after the census date. CCR, WCE, and contact class hours, even if it's a contact hour curriculum class, after the last day of class.
Okay, question. Is it an option to have front-end census 400% asynchronous when the students must come in on the front end? The class is more instructed and they can't enter too late. Do I need to reread that to you?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Is it an option to have front-end census for online 100% asynchronous when the student must come in on the front end? The class is more structured, and they can't enter too late. Could we apply the front-end census in this case and follow front-end census documentation requirements?
I'm not sure what front end census means, so let me say this. In a Con Ed or CCR class that is totally online, asynchronous, you have to take the total number of hours the class is being held for, divide by 4, and back up that many days. And the last day of class cannot be the census date. So I think the answer to this question is no. If it is a Con Ed or a curriculum class, a Con Ed or a CCR class, you must follow the code reference for setting your census date. Now, if it has a seated synchronous portion, then that makes it blended. And then you set the blended census date as you would any of your other blended or blended census dates.
Kimberly, did that answer your question or do we need to elaborate?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, great. Okay, do you have a time in, time out sheet for a contact hour law enforcement class if they document how many hours each student was there on the roster?
I'm not quite sure I understand, but yes, we would look if it was a contact hour class and you have a time in and out sheet. Yes, we're looking at that to see that the hours that they attended.
Okay, I think that's what they were asking.
Okay. Again, please make sure that you're getting your records in a timely manner. You need to set that policy. What works for Vance Granville may not be the same thing that works for Wake Tech. May not be the same thing that works for Tri-County. So set your policy, hold your instructors accountable, but make sure that you're having a conversation with the person who's reporting the ICR, because they're the ones who need that. and hold them accountable. We go across the state, and that is one of the biggest things that folks who submit the ICR say, and it's usually in Con Ed or CCR, most of the time Con Ed. Well, I don't get the records in time. I can't check them before the ICR is due. You all should be checking your records prior to reporting them on the ICR if possible. Not every single class can be checked, but the majority should be. Establish that set period for records to be returned and enforce it.
Okay. If a class cannot be held on the first day, and this day is also the census date, the best practice will be to cancel the section and rebuild it, correct?
Lashima would probably be able to answer that, but from a compliance standpoint, if you had, if we're supposed to have a class on October the 15th, and it's a 1-day class, and we can't hold class because there's a hurricane, we're just going to move that class. It doesn't have to be rebuilt from a compliance standpoint. You could just say, we couldn't hold it October 15th, we held it October 20th. Now, if the class was supposed to be held May 14th, and we can't hold it, and we're not going to hold it until May 20th, that's a different. Then you'd need to cancel it and rebuild it, I think.
Okay. This may be the same, I'm not sure. If you have a 1-day CE class and the date of the class and census is the same and it's shown on the attendance sheet, does the instructor have to write in the date?
Yes, for on the top of the roster, if your dates are not auto-populating, then yes, your instructor should write the day the class was held up at the top. Is that what the question was?
I will read it. If you have a 1-day CE class and the date of the class and census is the same, and it's shown on the attendance sheet, does the instructor have to write in the date?
So let me just make sure that I cover
Susie,
everything that
you
I
want
can.
to kind of get some clarity to that?
So what we would look for is on the top, the class would say that the class was held October 15th.
Well, my attendance sheet has the start date, same day, end date, same day, census date, same day. She signs it. She has a signature area when she signs it at the end of class. Does she still have to write the date when she signs it?
Oh, yes. We need the signature and date of the instructor. I apologize. I misunderstood the question.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay, in the past, the CCP classes, in the past, for CCP classes, we noted a number of associate, certificate, and diploma, pathway, and transfer hours that made up the total membership hours. Do you still prefer that we note these hours at the top of the page for each CCP class? Does that make your review easier?
I apologize. Could you read that again?
Yes, ma'am. In the past, for CCP classes, we noted the number of associate, certificate, diploma, pathway, and transfer hours that made up the total membership hours. Do you still prefer that we note these hours at the top of the page for each CCP class?
No, we don't need that. We're just looking for that class. If it's a ACA 122, we're just looking to see how many students. If the class was reported for 10 students, we're looking to see that 10 students entered.
That's the last question. Oh, wait, no, there's one more. CU question. What CCP documentation is needed during the audits? What is the
So,
rule of thumb on date of the documentation? We sometimes struggle with getting the high school principal's signature on some documentations prior to the first day of class.
so I would say that you would need to talk to Aaron Mabe about your signature dates and things like that, because there may be some other issues that I am not aware of. But let me tell you what compliance is going to ask you to do. We ask that once everyone has landed in their program of study, or their pathway rather, in a semester, that you take a snapshot of that class, of all your CCP students, and put it on an Excel spreadsheet. we understand they may move through the semester. So about the end of the semester, go ahead and run a report that shows what the pathway is for all of your curriculum students. And then save that spreadsheet. And when the compliance examiner sends the request for documentations, they're going to ask you to send that spreadsheet to them, separated out by semester. All we need is one line for each student, but we need their name, their ID number, their primary pathway, and their secondary pathway. And we're going to pick the students that we want. We pick a certain number from summer, fall, and spring. We're going to send the list back to you. We're going to request that you give us an unofficial transcript. We're going to look at an unofficial college transcript. If we can't get to a class on that transcript, then you may have to provide some other documentation, but that is the basic what we're asking for CCP in curriculum. For CCP in Con Ed, we're going to need a spreadsheet that you've saved every semester with the student name, ID, and the classes that they're taking, and the high school. Now, it may be that the person who's doing the ICR, maybe you have to keep you're the one that's supposed to get that spreadsheet, but that spreadsheet is probably going to come from the CCP person. So make sure that the correct person is saving that spreadsheet, but turning it in every semester, because what happens is when your pathways are incorrect, that's going to lead to questions that we can't get to the information for.
Okay, next is if a section has to be rebuilt due to a naming error. For example, a newer version of the class was available, but naming conventions was not followed correctly. Does all the paperwork documentation associated with that section also need to be redone?
No, not like the student registration and all that. No, we wouldn't need that. We could get there. You just need to put something there, be able to explain it to us. That's fine.
Okay, I think this is for CE. For hybrid, blended, or clinical classes, do you still want us to show the distribution of hours among the different instructional methods? For example, do you want to see that a 96-hour hybrid class met for 48 online hours and 48 face-to-face hours?
Yes, we need to see, because we're trying to get to the total scheduled hours, and we can't get there if we don't know how many to look for.
Okay, that's the last one.
Now, again, I want to stress to you, attendance records must be signed by the instructor who taught the class. Please, please, please make sure you are checking your instructor rosters and ensuring that your instructors are signing them. And if you're sitting there at your college, in your office, sipping your coffee, thinking that I've lost my mind, rest easy. I have not. People are not signing their rosters. So that might be you. If you're the one thinking that I'm sitting there losing my mind, you might be the one that needs to check your rosters. Please, I beg of you, please make sure that you're checking your rosters all the time. But especially if you are on this year's compliance review schedule, please make sure that you are checking your rosters. You're ensuring that your instructors are signing them. Should you need us, this is our contact information. Reach out to any of us. If you don't know who your assigned examiner is, you can contact any of us. We'll be glad to help you. Do we have any other questions?
I have one more, and the funny part is, as you were saying, please, all I can see is that SpongeBob, and you sounded like SpongeBob saying that. So Angela asks if it is a canceled, or makeup for the section start date, whether a one-day class or multiple-day class, and even if the course is rebuilt or not rebuilt in SOFF to reflect the new dates, wouldn't the student records transcript still reflect the wrong meeting dates in STAC and SACD?
Yes.
I don't know. That's going to have to be a machine or one of the. I don't. We're just looking at
Yes.
the
Oh,
roster.
she said yes. She said
Okay.
yes.
Thank you. And I do want to say, I know we have Lashima on here. I don't know whether we have Brian on here. Those are two top folks across the state. If you've got questions, they've got answers. They are excellent. Reach out to them if you have those, colleague questions. That's not exactly what we do. We can try to help you from a compliance standpoint, but Lashima and Brian do an excellent job. So reach out to them too.
Yes, they do.
Well, I want to thank you all for giving us the opportunity to meet with you today. We always enjoy meeting with this group, and we appreciate Dr. Hickman's support. Again, if you need us, here's our contact information, so reach out anytime.
So question on that. And I'm gonna stop recording now. So thank everyone for being on here. I'm going to stop recording. And what we're going to stay on, in case you have questions you don't want to ask, say it again. Oh,